Move on to the other story I wanted you to break down for us here at Pisco, which is, we can put this next C1 element up on the screen here. This was a huge development. I'm honestly surprised it hasn't gotten more attention. But a prisoner swap has freed Americans in Venezuela for migrants in El Salvador. So the TLDR here is that all of these Venezuelan migrants in the U.S. who were shipped out using the Alien Enemies Act, no due process, to CECOT in El Salvador, where basically the expectation was they would never be released. CECOT, of course, notorious for human rights abuses, slave labor, and all the rest. They have, most, if not all, have now been freed to Venezuela as part of this deal. So talk to us a little bit about just the details of what happened here. And I also think that it's important to get into. This really exposes the lie of what the Trump administration has been saying in court all along, which is that, oh, that's just in control. You know, El Salvador is controlled now. We have nothing to do with these prisoners. We can't possibly get them released, even if we wanted to.
Yeah, that's the key component here. The Trump administration was engaged in like one of the most horrific abuses of due process in our country's history, really. Just picking people up and putting them on a plane without any notice or opportunity to be heard and shipping them off to a torture dungeon, a gulag, foreign gulag in CECOT, where now we're getting information from Kilmar Abrego Garcia about like him being beaten, him being forced to, you know, defecate because he was like kneeling for so long, and other, you know, outrageous accusations about the treatment there. You know, mass people in a cell without any opportunity, you know, really to contact lawyers or your family. So the conditions here are absolutely deplorable. And as a matter of policy, this administration sent these people to those camps without any due process whatsoever. And all the while, they were disclaiming that they had any power to bring them back. They were doing this song and dance before Judge Boasberg, before the Supreme Court even, that potentially these people were outside of their command and control, outside of their ability, that really, you know, in front of the Oval Office in that like horrific meeting with Bukele, pretending like it was under the sovereign power of El Salvador that these people were being held. And we knew all along this was a crooked deal that was sort of cooked up by the administration to pay the government of El Salvador to house these individuals. And so they were there at the discretion and urging of the United States government. And now this proves it, right? What you're pointing to, this deal between the government of Venezuela, who had, you know, kidnapped or held Americans or American legal permanent residents under their control, and to have that deal in exchange for some of these people who were sent to CECOT in El Salvador shows that who's running the show here? The American government. They're the ones in control of these prisoners. And also we knew this because El Salvador had specifically stated so in front of the UN in the weeks before. This is like something that is not even like seriously contested, but we had to deal with really the fraudsters and the hacks from the MAGA wing of the party and from the influencer class who are pretending that somehow Trump couldn't, if he wanted to, bring these people back either to this country or to some other country.
Yeah.
And if we take a look at the next couple of elements, there's some familiar names to people who followed this closely. So next one, this is Jersey Reyes. This is the case of the goalie that some people may remember. He was part of the deal here. And then if we go to the next element, Andry Hernandez Romero, he was the makeup artist who was imprisoned because of his tattoos, also part of the deal. So one of the things, and this is the final element, the Mother Jones story, C3, one of the things that's important legally here is that there are protections from leaving America, being sent from America to a prison where conditions, here Mother Jones reports that people they were beaten every day, where the conditions are known to the United States government to be like this. So could you explain a little bit of what basically this is part of our legal system, is you're not allowed to send people to foreign prisons where you know the conditions are going to be, and you can tell us particularly what it is, but like less than the standard of the United States. Is that the legal provision?
So I think the three main things to look at here are asylum, withholding of removal, and the Convention Against Torture. And some of these are pursuant to international agreements. The Convention Against Torture is U.S. law, like incorporated by Congress. And it basically prevents deportations to locations where someone is likely to be tortured. And that applies whether you were here illegally. That applies whether or not, you know, you entered without inspection and admission at the border. The United States has an active obligation not to send people to places where they're likely to receive torture. With respect to asylum and withholding, different standards in those cases. The legal nuances like are beyond the scope of this, this interview. But basically, where you're going to be subject to persecution, limitations on the government's ability to. That's basically what Kilmar Berger Garcia was granted withholding of removal because of the likelihood of persecution at the hands of the El Salvadorian government or at the hands of someone with which the El Salvadorian government doesn't have the authority or power or willingness to stop in the case of the gangs. So yeah, these are protections in our laws, and that's one of the reasons why now that there's all this furor about the administration sending people to like South Sudan and places on the brink of civil war where they're also likely to be subject to inhumane treatment. So yeah, there are actual active obligations on America, like American law that we passed that we should follow that prevent us from doing these kinds of deportations to places where it's fundamentally unsafe or where people are fundamentally going to be subject to like deprivations of rights and persecution and torture.
And I think it's worth noting, obviously, it's better that these men are not in CECOT, given the record of abuses and what they themselves are saying now when journalists are able to speak with them about what their treatment entailed. But in many instances, I mean, their rights were still violated here. In that Mother Jones article, they write, for some relatives, the news of the men's return to Venezuela evoked mixed feelings. Maria Quevedo, the mother of Eddie Adolfo Hurtado Quevedo, told Mother Jones she was feeling relieved but still scared. I'm happy because God gave me the gift of seeing my son free on my birthday. I'm scared because my son is going to Venezuela where he was threatened by a paramilitary group called Colectivos. Many of these individuals actually had ongoing asylum claims that they were, some of them would have been rejected and some of them potentially had, a legitimate standing and may have succeeded here. So just speak a little bit about that aspect of it, Pisco.
Yeah, something like 30% of asylum claims that are petitioned are meritorious. And so, it's not this like 5%, 6%, 7%. It's a significant percentage of these claims, at least with respect to asylum, are granted meritorious asylum claims. Even under the Trump administration, which oftentimes like rolls back protections and rolls back different coverage of asylum provisions and changes the rules under the Department of Justice. So it absolutely is a concern. And think about what the implications would be if the Trump administration were successful and being able to make this kind of laundering scheme where you just send someone to like an intermediary and then do some kind of crooked deal to send them back to the country where they were trying to flee for persecution. And that way, like, get rid of their legal obligations under the asylum statutes, under the Convention Against Torture, and under the withholding statutes. It would be like a massive hole in our law, and obviously against the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution, where unanimously, even this Supreme Court, which is basically walking over nails to give Trump the benefit of the doubt in every single case, unanimously said even illegally present aliens in this country have procedural due process rights before their deportations and renditions. And so this should concern everyone. It's not just a matter of like, yeah, some of these people probably did some crimes, some of these people probably don't have meritorious claims, but it's the principle about letting the government make a road through due process and make an end run around U.S. statutory law that protects these people from these kinds of substantive deprivations.